Okay, it's Valentine's Day. It's like negative 11 degrees outside, and we're basically going to do a comparison between two of the premium enclosures I use for my tarantulas. One being the one by Jamie's, and the other one being Lorex. I believe it's Lorex Plastics. It's actually based in my home state of Connecticut. Over the years, I did a couple reviews on these enclosures. I did a review of the Lorex one back when I got them about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And I've had several people ask me which one's the better premium enclosure. There are other places that make premium enclosures out there. TarantulaCages.com is very, very popular. So I'm just going to share what my feelings on them. Again, this is just a review. I use them both. I like them both. But there are some key differences that I think somebody who wants to spend this kind of money should take into consideration. A lot of my cages are kind of utilitarian in that I'm looking for things that stack. I'm looking for things that allow me to utilize the space I have because I only have so much room and I have a lot of tarantulas. So I do try to give them a lot of room even in their like sterilite containers, but I do have some showcase spiders that I like to put in the acrylic ones, and I'm actually looking into getting a couple more for some other spiders. One being my Vicularia versicolor. I would love to put her in something nice. So to start off, price-wise, Jamie's I believe is $75. Shipping is included. They are shipped rather quickly. You can also buy the version that has all the fixings in it. So it comes with cocoa fiber, water dish, the cork bark, plants, everything you need to set up the enclosure correctly. When I first got into the hobby, this was very, very convenient for me because I would buy an adult tarantula and then you could get the cage and everything in one spot. Lorex Plastics, I've tried to get on the website. It doesn't look like he has his website active anymore, or maybe my computer was just slow. However, he does sell from eBay. The size I had here, I believe, was like the 7-gallon size. I couldn't find this on eBay, but he does have a comparable one now. It's like 6 gallons. It's a little more square. He's been experimenting with some of the sizes, so I'm not sure if this one's still in production, but he does have a comparable one. These sell for $45 to $49.99, and shipping is usually 18 to 20 bucks. So it looks a little bit cheaper. If you buy more than one cage, unfortunately, the shipping is basically per cage. So if you buy 3 cages, technically it would be 18 bucks per cage unless you change that. I did get a deal on him because it was a misunderstanding and he gave me the shipping for 18 bucks, which made it a fantastic deal, but that's not usually how it goes. So they're comparable in price, and when you're looking to buy a nice cage to display your spiders in, these guys both look fantastic. TarantulaCages.com, I'll just mention them. They're very, very popular. Their prices are a little bit higher, but the guy's got a stellar reputation for making them. Shipping, I'm not sure about on those. Now, appearances, they both look fantastic. You can see I have my G. Porteri female, who I actually fed a cricket a minute ago because I had to change her water. And I have my Vicularia Metallica, who's up in here, who I've been starting cleaning her cage out because she's basically pooping everywhere. But they look fantastic, and I have no issues as far as display-wise. Like that, they're very, very pretty cages. They display the spiders nicely. They're obviously completely transparent, so people that don't like using the plastic sterilite containers because they're a little bit foggy, you get a very, very clear view. Just know with acrylic, it scratches very, very easily, and over time it can yellow. So although they're nice and crystal clear right now, that could change over time. And same thing with the Lorex. I love the design of these. They're built sort of like tanks. You can see my L.A. Bune female in here, who I love, and she gets the display one because it's one of my rare spiders. But they look fantastic, especially if you set them up with some plants and the cork bark and everything. You can do a really nice job with them. And obviously, I don't go overboard. There are other people that really go all out decorating their enclosures, and that's great. I will probably do something a little more fancy next time she molts and change it up a bit. But display-wise, they look great. Versatility is where they start to separate themselves a bit. Lorex, it's basically you either have to buy a terrestrial enclosure or an arboreal enclosure, and they're, I believe, different prices for each. I bought the terrestrials, the 7-gallon. I can't turn this on its side and use it as an arboreal enclosure. So if I decided that, hey, I'm not going to use this for the Itabune anymore, it's gotten too big, I want to use it for one of my arboreals, I'd have to buy a brand new cage. So I think that's where Jamie's really starts to separate itself from the pack, because this is the same enclosure. This one's basically set in a way that it can be used as terrestrial. I should have more substrate in there. One of these days I'm going to get around to add more. She's just been here so long, I hate to disrupt her. But you can fill this right up, make a terrestrial enclosure, or you flip it on its side. The way the door is made, basically you have a dam down here to hold your substrate in. And what I really like is for some of the arboreals who like to web up toward the top, you have this area up here that they can web up at the top, and you can still open the enclosure. And I'm going to go ahead. Boom, opens up. Front opening. So again, versatility-wise, I like the fact that if I decided I didn't want my pink toe in here anymore and wanted to put a terrestrial in, or if I decided my parterre was going into something different and I wanted to use this as an arboreal enclosure, I can do that. So it's like a 2-for-1 deal. And I think that's really important when you're plunking down this kind of money. Construction, I have to again kind of hand it to Jamie's. These things are really, really solid. She uses obviously thicker plastic for the front and the back, the thinner plastic where it's bent. The doors, I think 1/8 inch, but it feels very, very solid. I've had these this one's over 2 years now. Little bit of warping in the corner here, but nothing severe. And they just feel much more solid. Now, if we look over at the Lorex ones, right off the bat, the covers here shift. They do open easily. The whole thing opens up like a little chest. I do like that because it gives me, anybody that's watched my videos, I like to have a lot of room to work when I have to clean things out. Opens easily, but you can see how the lip here is already shifting. And that is just unfortunately the nature of acrylic. However, if you use stronger, materials, thicker materials, sometimes you get less of the warping. You can see right there, the whole thing's kind of warping. And when you put substrate in it and try to pack it down, I've noticed it can warp it a bit too. So they're nice. They're not, I would not say they're poorly made, but I'm definitely giving an edge to Jamie's Enclosure for just the feeling that they feel very, very solid. Finally, one more thing to consider, and I think this is honestly the deal breaker for me, is the venting. Jamie does her venting basically right in the enclosure. She drills holes in it, sort of like how I would do my Sterilite enclosures. So there's no vent to put in there. There's no metal vent or screen vent. It's cross-ventilated, so we have vents on this side, on this side. If you set it up arboreally, we have cross-ventilation on this side and on this side. So it allows the ventilation, but it also looks very nice and clean. There's no vent or anything to block your view. And this is where I think Lorex falls apart. Unfortunately, we have the aluminum vents, which may be great because these things are also used for, he advertises it can be used for frogs, spiders, whatever you want to put in them, snakes. So these may be great, but they're not glued, which at first it irritated me a little bit because it was like, right, throw a little glue in there, get those things in there. However, it proved very, very useful because if anybody knows, with the mesh vents, tarantulas can chew through them. And this is where I have the biggest issue, because if we look here, this is actually the vent out of the Endobune container, and it is chewed all the way through it. And I've mentioned in a couple of my other videos the fact that I have to replace these, and I kind of got lazy with it and didn't go about it. And I came in one day and basically found this in my tarantula room right over the floor with the thing chewed completely open. Now, A, that could have been an escape and I could have lost one of my favorite spiders. It could have fallen because this one's kept a couple feet off the ground. B, they can hurt their fangs in these. I've noticed that my LP is also, she's in one of these enclosures as well, it started chewing. So now I'm looking at replacing all of the vents on these. I can't really get them all in there. I have to replace all of them. So you'll see they got this little blue one over here that I've already gone ahead and replaced. I'm gonna have to do the whole thing. I'm gonna try to find black ones so that they look a little more attractive. But here's the deal. You're plunking down money for these cages. You've gone ahead and spent the money, you've set them all up, and now you have to, right off the bat, go ahead and change the vents, which is kind of a nuisance. And I would say anybody looking at acrylic enclosures should really keep in mind that if they're buying acrylic enclosures that have these wire vents and they're glued in, now you've got a huge mess if they start chewing through it. The one good thing about these not being glued in was the fact I was able to easily pop them out and just put another one in. I do have orders online from roundvents.com, new vents to replace all of these. But if these had been glued in, that would have been a nightmare. And I have read situations where people bought the nice ones where the vents were glued in, they look real nice, and the tea chewed through it, and they end up having to like duct tape over them or try to chisel off the glue or the fixative they use to hold the vents in. So that for me is kind of a deal breaker and should be for some people. Again, if you know what you're getting into and you find that these are cheaper and it's not a big deal to order the cage, I would order the vents to go with them and replace them before you even put your spider in it, and I can understand that. But for people looking for cages for tarantulas, you want something that looks attractive and is appropriate for the animal. And the way these come, they're not yet appropriate for the animal, as I'm learning now, because now I have to go through and change a bunch of these vents out. So both very, very nice cages. Unfortunately, I think Jamie's, being a tarantula dealer, makes hers specifically for tarantulas. They're not for snakes, they're not for frogs, they're not for hermit crabs. Lorex is kind of an all-purpose. You can use it for any. If you look on his site, one section it'll be under reptile cages, another section the same exact cage will be under tarantula cages. So it's kind of an all-purpose thing. And the guy's doing this on the side. He doesn't. I don't believe he has any exotics. It's just something he does to make a little extra money. And although he does a nice job with them, I don't think they're specifically made for tarantulas. And I think those vents are something you really need to think about if shopping for a nice acrylic cage. I'm not saying don't get acrylic cages, they look fantastic, but it is something where you want to make sure that when you buy them, you take into account if they have these and what kind of species you're putting in, because those terrestrials can and will dig right through them, tear right through them. And then you could have an escaped tarantula or a tarantula that injures its fangs on it.